Hello, Roadrunners. Welcome back to this week's episode of Rio Talk. My name is Enrique Medina. I'm joined by John Rodriguez yet again. And in this week's episode of Rio Talk, we're going to be talking about the new curfew and the new restrictions that are being put here throughout California, in the state of California. Of course, that pertains to us, for you Roadrunners, because we do live here in California. And with coronavirus cases, all the COVID-19 cases spiking up in California and throughout the nation, specifically here in California, there have been new orders that are being put out, specifically starting today, Friday, November 20th, moving forward all the way to December 21st, 2020. We have an order that states all non-essential activities will be stopping from 10 p.m. all the way to 5 p.m. or 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. All non-essential activities will stop. And then also along with that, that includes other things such as businesses such as personal care that requires you to take off your mask. Those businesses will not be in business during this time, of course, due to that risk of taking off the mask. We also have restaurants, breweries, wineries, bars, any other places where you attend the place in person, whether it's outside or inside, it must close from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. They're still offering, pickups. They're still offering curbside, things like that, but you can't physically go into the place. And then also private outdoor gatherings that include 15 people or more. Well, in the case of that, they could only include 15 people. They can't include any more than that. Only 15 people for outdoor gatherings with no more than 3 households consisting of those 15 people. So we're seeing a lot of new restrictions that are very strict, obviously, with the coronavirus spiking up. And we could see even greater restrictions in the future if the cases do rise up. So, John, let me know a little bit about kind of what's been going on with this situation, what we may expect here in California in the future, and what are your thoughts on the restrictions being put right now in California?
It honestly feels like basically a deja vu. This is basically what we experienced back in March, and we all know how that worked out, and here we are like about 8 months later, and yeah, it looks like we're gonna have to go back to these strategies again. To be on lockdown. Obviously, when we were on lockdown for the first time, um, businesses were open, but they're not stretched out to where you can eat outdoors or sit in a bar outside or do some activities outside. And you also got to remember that, like, sports as well. You can't play any sports. Everything was more into precautions. Excuse me. But this is in a way, I feel like it's a good way to try to prevent the numbers from going up, because November itself, like, the numbers have been just increasing a lot. ABC 7, according to ABC 7, the first 7 days of November, they had about 36,105 cases for the first 7 days of November. On average, that's 5,443 cases a day. And the next 8 days after the first week of November, the numbers went up as well. However, it went from 36,000 to 64,595, which is on average 8,074 cases a day, which is way more than 2,000 cases from the first 7 days of November. So, in a way, it's good that they want to, like, have this lockdown again to try to prevent from the numbers from going up. This is something that Newsom has took serious. However, in a way, it's also excuse me. In a way, it's kind of unfair. Now, I don't, well, not unfair, but in his part, I think he should have set a better example because just last Friday he was caught, being with in a party where there was a lot of people without masks, and that kind of blew up on social media. It was all over the news, and like, there are a bunch of Californians here that live here explaining like, well, it's not fair. Like, obviously they care about their lives, and I'm assured that they care about everyone else's lives outside of their household, like their neighbors and their family. But they want to take that into precaution, but they also see like, well, why are we going to take orders from him if he's not even doing what his guidelines, what he told us to do? But and
Mhm.
to be straightforward, I think Governor Newsom needs to set a better example. Obviously he knows better, but he really needs to set a new example, and he needs to prove to us, like, why this is going to work. you know Unfortunately,
Yeah,
in my opinion, the virus is out there. One, like, it's out there. We can't There is no way how we're going to get that virus out of the state. In my opinion, maybe we would, but it's
yeah,
out there. So I
and
mean,
and
it's
you do bring the point that with Governor Newsom, of course, although that incident might have happened, ultimately this is to help lower the numbers and to make sure things are settling down, that are trending downwards instead of upwards the way they have recently, of course. And you mentioned it last week too. We have the holidays coming up. We have Thanksgiving just coming up next week, and we have Christmas as well coming up not too long afterwards. So um, this time specifically, I'm not surprised that the restrictions are being this strict. I wouldn't even be surprised if they get even stricter, just due to that fact with the holidays coming up, and specifically Thanksgiving and Christmas, which is typically a time that a lot of people spend together and in households. Going back to that topic I mentioned in regards to the restrictions, where there could only be 15 people from no more than 3 households outdoors in outdoor gatherings. That's pretty much to prevent the numbers from going up from gatherings such as Thanksgiving gatherings, maybe Friendsgivings, or Christmas parties or anything like that. So it's to prevent things like that, because we know how deadly and how truly fast, quick, and high this virus could really spike up in numbers. And like you had mentioned, right now in November, it's really spiked up as fast as all the way back in March. So this is something us as a state needs to take serious. One thing I did not mention is that this is in effect in the purple states, or excuse me, in the purple zones of the state of California. Um, Essentially, those are the states who have the highest number of cases in California. So these restrictions, these rules are being set into effect for those purple zones here in California, for those counties who are in that purple area with a lot of cases rising up. So we need to make sure as a state, as people here in California, we do our part in following these guidelines that have been set up by the state. Make sure we all stay safe and do our part for lowering down the numbers, of course.
Oh yeah, most definitely. In my own opinion, I think 15 is actually a reasonable number. I don't think you should have more than 15 for a household, but I think that's fair enough. You know, Especially like as you mentioned with the holidays coming up for sure. Like everybody wants to see their family. You want to visit. Families probably out of state, maybe even out of the country, but you want to take things more cautious this year, especially with everything that let's not forget that we are not the only state nor country facing coronavirus. It's global. It's all over the world, and we need to take care of one another. So um I think everyone needs to not just be selfish, not think like well, I want to see them. I want to see my family members. I haven't seen them in so long. You could call them, FaceTime them, but right now it's not best to go door to door, see your family members. You want to give them not their personal space. You want to give them their space to like to not try um to try to get attached to the virus. It's very dangerous. And
Mm,
but as I was saying earlier, like you don't want people to be selfish, and unfortunately today, like on social
yeah.
media, people are already going selfish. Like there are pictures of Targets, empty shelves at Targets, like like it's just going crazy again, all over March. People are panicking again. One thing that I think a lot of people, uh, mo- excuse me, I think one thing that a lot of people need to do is not panic. Let's take control of ourselves. Let's keep calm and let's help one another. We're like everyone's going through this. We're each and one of us are not the only ones going through this.
Yeah, and it's true. It's not a surprise that people are doing that, especially how we saw things were going back in March when the whole lockdown started. Things were hectic at that point, and they're definitely getting hectic right now with all the numbers rising and everything spiking up exponentially, super quickly. Um, One thing I do want to mention, of course, is if the numbers do end up spiking up even more than what it is right now, we will have to see stricter restrictions here in California in those purple zones that I talked about earlier. So, if there is that number of cases, the overall average getting a lot higher than what it is right now already, we will see stricter restrictions. Specifically, we could see another lockdown again at that point where only essential workers and people for certain emergencies, medical emergencies and things of that nature will be the only people who can go out up to that point. And we will have some sort of curfew at that point too. The way we're having that curfew right now for essential for places, businesses from that 10 to 5 a.m. range. So it's a crazy time right now, but we all need to make sure we do our part in making sure that this virus does slow down. And I'm curious to see if the numbers do end up lowering with the help of these restrictions. I'm curious to see whether we do decide to keep those restrictions a little further to help lower it even more. I'm curious to see what might happen even afterwards if the numbers do start to spike down, because we have heard rumblings, of course, of there being vaccines that may help at some point in the near future. So I'm curious to see how much more we could still do on our part before something like that could come about to the public, specifically with things like this. Um, but at this certain point in time, of course, we need to make sure we're all doing our part in especially with Thanksgiving and Christmas coming around, how we mentioned, making sure we don't gather around too much and making sure we don't, overbuy things such as toilet paper, hand sanitizers, things of that nature that you had mentioned, because people do get very crazy about that. And it's a great point that you bring up that, that's a real situation, a real circumstance because of what's happening right now. And we all need to make sure we truly do our part. And this is truly going to be the biggest test up to this point with the coronavirus cases, at least here in California, maybe even across the nation, because numbers are spiking up in certain places. Um, this is really a test of our discipline as people here in California, wherever the numbers are spiking. We need to make sure we're disciplined and do our part to make sure this virus and the cases don't rise up again.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, to follow up with like you said, like if we keep following these procedures, and the numbers do go down, and like it's pretty much like to continue what you said, like you don't know how long, if well, even if we're gonna extend these protocols, because if it's been successful on getting the numbers down, my opinion, I feel like in some ways it will get down. However, it's not gonna get down to our goal. Like let's say for example, we want to get that number down to 1,000. I think it's going to take a little bit longer than expected for it to go down like,
Hmm.
1,000 cases. So
Yeah,
it's like it's a process. It's something that's not going to take one day. I
of
mean,
course, of
yeah.
course.
So I do feel like it's going to take a lot of time. I'm not afraid to say or to think and to predict that we're going to see this protocol last all the way probably maybe even till March of next year, because I feel like it's not just the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas. You also got New Year's. A lot of people want to see their families from New Year's. I know the streets
That's
get
true.
very get they get really crazy. I mean, you look at the Dodgers and the Lakers, like a lot of people were out in the streets. You know,
Yeah, it could. Yeah, people still have that urge with things like
yeah,
New
exactly.
Year's and Christmas and Thanksgiving, and especially with what we've had with Black Friday. I
Most
don't know
definitely.
how they're gonna do things with that. I'm assuming that might not happen because the COVID restrictions, obviously. Um, I'm curious to see how that'll happen because that's a big part of the culture here in this nation. Black Friday is a big day for a lot of businesses, and that'll affect that too. But most importantly, it's because we want to keep those numbers down.
Yeah,
That's the main point.
yeah, most definitely. But yeah, I just feel like this is these protocols are going to take longer than expected. I honestly feel like we're going to see it like you know if worst comes to worst, we are probably going to be quarantined probably for another year, because if it takes more you know than as expected, to get this coronavirus, I'm not going to say you know cured or for the coronavirus to be gone, because it's unfortunate that
Hmm.
it's not going to go away. Whether we like it or not, it's not going to go away. Look at the flu. It made a big impact to a lot of lives back then. We were able to find some ways and some vaccines to get us not as sick if we ever come with someone in contact with the flu, or if we have it ourselves. We're able to to take care of it. We're able to make ourselves healthier, take medicine, take prescriptions. But with the coronavirus, unfortunately, it's here and it's not going to go away. We have to
Yeah, and
remind ourselves about that.
yeah, even up to that point that you mentioned the vaccine, even though there has been a lot of progression with that vaccine and it potentially being distributed to the public, we're still not sure about how that might actually go about with how it'll be distributed, in what type of manner, how effective it'll truly be for specific people. We're still not too sure how quickly that can solve, how that can potentially solve the problem either. So the point you bring up of us still being in quarantine for even more than what we may have expected, it definitely is a real possibility, and it's just a matter of us staying disciplined and really truly doing our part in wearing our masks, social distancing, doing everything we can, especially right now. It's going to be a very interesting and tough time with the holidays coming up. People do have those urges to be with their families and things of that nature. It's going to be a lot of discipline from our part, as I had mentioned already plenty of times. So uh, we really need to dig deep and do our part to help solve this situation.
Most
With
definitely.
that, do you have any final things you might want to add?
Honestly, just stay safe. Like, let's take these protocols serious. Let's take care of one another, but most importantly, like, for everyone to be safe, have a happy Thanksgiving, and let's take these protocols serious.
Yeah, and to finish off, we have these specific restrictions that are going into effect essentially from November 20th and the 21st all the way to December 21st. Make sure we actually listen and follow these guidelines presented by the state of California, because this is what it's going to take for us to slowly have those cases dip down. Obviously won't do the whole problem, but of course too, on my part, just stay safe, everybody. Make sure we're social distancing, wearing our masks, staying disciplined throughout the holidays, and doing what we need to do to help stop the spread, of course. So with that being said, stay safe, everybody. Enjoy your holidays. We have Thanksgiving coming up next week. May you all have a happy Thanksgiving. From our part, my name again is Enrique Medina, joined by John Rodriguez. Don't forget to follow us at El Paisano Media on Instagram. Make sure to follow the website for any updates on COVID-19. Thank you, guys.